Hello, hello. We are live. Hello, Vanessa. So excited for you to join us today. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Happy New Year. And I love our topic for the day today because you are going to give us four, not one, not two, not three, but four ways that we are going to be able to set our goals, prioritize our goals, get our goals knocked out, done, ready to rock and roll. So I'm very excited about that.
Yes, me
Vanessa,
too.
if you want to just introduce yourself a little bit, tell us who you are, what you're all about, and then we'll dive in a little bit.
Yeah, so everyone, for those who don't know me, hi, my name is Vanessa Amy, and I am the business defibrillator, and I help small business owners revive, grow, and scale their business without burnout, without sleep deprivation, and without meditation.
Ooh, I love it. I love it. You know, it's funny. Like, I'm so hyper, and I always think I need to get a little bit of meditation going on, but trying to do it is really difficult for me.
Yeah, it's not for everyone, which is why I help my clients do it. For those who don't, it's not for you, then you don't need to do it, right? It's not a necessary thing. For some people, it's helpful. For some people, it's not. For some people, they just can't. And the effort to put into trying to is just
you,
not. No.
you could be doing something
Yeah.
else. Yeah, I do others. I do others. I do try. I mean, I do, but I do other things as well to kind of have the same effect on me. Anyway, so what got you interested in this topic in particular? So what is the actual? I didn't write it down in front of me. What's the actual title? I don't have it.
4 steps to setting your business goals in 2022 without, while keeping them on track or something like that. Yeah.
Awesome. And what got you interested in this topic? Like, I assume, you know, being a business coach or consultant, that this is one of the things that you work on with your clients, right?
It is, yes. In terms of helping them to prioritize their goals and such things. And so, for me, what got me into it is that, and I'm also part of working groups as well too. And it was a topic that was just coming up. People are just like, what am I going to do for 2022? What's the goals? All that jazz. And for me, I mean, by the time October, November comes along, I already know what my priorities are for the first 3 months of 2022. But for a lot of people, it is, that December time is that resetting. And then a lot of people, though, as well, why is it still relevant? But we're not in December, Vanessa, you might be saying. We're in January. How is this still relevant today? Well, essentially, a lot of people, they start on their goals. So then they have their goals, and then they start on it, right? And it's very easy. Actually, we're coming up on this, essentially, Monday, the second Monday. There's a stat, essentially, that says that this is where essentially majority of people fall off on their resolutions. It's like they do it for like the first 1 to 2 weeks of the year, and then resolutions or goals they do for the first 1 to 2 weeks of the year, and then they kind of fall off. And essentially during the third week of January, and there's like a stat around this. It's a lot of people essentially who do that. Majority, I think it's like over 80% or so of people end up falling off on their goals and resolutions by the third week of January. And so it's still relevant today. And so the topic we're talking about here is, what are the 4 steps for you to ensure for your business goals to ensure that you're not falling off the wagon? Because once you fall off the wagon and don't keep track of those business goals, especially at the beginning of the year, that pretty much doesn't set you up for success at all for the rest of the year.
And so, how many times have you like written one down, and then the end of the year comes around and you're like, oh, I'm going to do them for next year, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, let me find the one from last year. You don't even remember what it is at that stage of the game unless you're consciously thinking about it throughout the year. So I just think that's so powerful. I mean, I used to do that when I was younger and then find it a couple, the next year, a couple years later, and be like, oh my God, I totally forgot about that. Had never even done anything to get myself towards it. So that happens. And I think it's pretty cool to focus on it. So what's your first one? Hit me.
The first step, yeah. So the first step is essentially for you to figure out what's working. And so it's also very easy for entrepreneurs, to say, okay, they look at the past year, 2021, they'll say, oh, okay, this was a terrible year. My goal was to get to 200,000, but I only got to 40,000 or 100,000. Or I was supposed to get to 10 clients a month, but I only got to 2 clients. Or I was supposed to get to this many followers or connections, but I only got to this amount. Oh, my business is bad. Right. And for a lot of
or blame it on COVID and not what you were doing.
Yes, that too. That's the other thing they do as well too, right? And essentially the first step is really looking at what is working, because chances are that, yes, maybe you didn't get to the 10 clients or the 100 sales in your e-commerce store for the month, but you got to 20 of them, 20 sales per month, or you got the 2 clients per month, right? And so we got to 40,000 in the year, right? Which is still beating the majority and average of small business owners. But essentially, it is essentially looking at what is working, right? So what helped you to get to that place? And then essentially your goal for 2022 is going to have to include supercharging that, right? And putting some energy and charge into what it was that was working. And because it's very easy for entrepreneurs to also say, okay, nothing is working, so let me just pivot. And by pivot, let me just do a whole nother business, or let me just, cancel everything I was doing, or let me just rebrand everything. And, and it's just like, you just do a whole 180. And it's like, that's not needed. That drastic action is not needed, essentially. Right. And so it's like, stick to what it is that you're doing, but understand step number 1, what is working? Because something is working. There is definitely something that is working. So something is working, ensure that you pick that out so that you can then actually focus and supercharge it for the upcoming year.
I love that you're saying that, because so I work with a lot of small businesses like chiropractors. So for them, it's not necessarily like their business, that it might be like the way that they're running their marketing or something like that. Yeah. But for entrepreneurs, they will totally change businesses like every quarter, for a while. I mean, a lot of people do that over and over and over, or full tactics or whatever, both entrepreneurs and small businesses, like you were saying, full tactics, doing that 180 is basically crazy, because then you're just going to do it again at the end of the next quarter or the next year, or however often.
Exactly.
So I love that. So find what's working and supercharge it.
Yes. And then essentially after you do that, number 2 is understanding tweaks, because now, yes, something is working, but obviously some things weren't working. So that's steps 2 and 3. But step number 2 is essentially looking at the tweaks. And so it's sort of thinking about planting. It's kind of like when you're planting or you're gardening, or, maybe when you were a kid, they did some exercise with you, did some plants and gardening in the class, or whatever it was. But essentially it's that you are, okay, you have a plant and it's like not doing too well. So maybe you add a stick to it, to help keep it standing or something like that. Or you decide to move it to a different windowsill to give it a little bit more sunlight. Or you decide to move it to a different part of the house so that, the temperature is a little bit better, whatever it may be. But essentially, there's something in your business that, okay, perhaps it's not working, but doesn't need to be stopped, right? Maybe you can still do it, but you just need to tweak it a bit. And so what that could look like, that is a different thing for different people. But let's say, for example, you were someone who were, you were using Instagram, for example, for your business, and you're someone that's using Instagram for your business, or you're someone that's doing a podcast and you're doing podcasts, for example, right? And you could say, oh my God, this podcast doesn't work. I only have 50,000 or 50,000 subscribers. Some people will be like, oh my God, that's it. That's all I have. I wanted 200, but I only got 50,000. Oh my goodness. Right. And so then they'll just be like, it's terrible. And then people actually do this. It's sad, but they do this. And so then they'll decide, okay, maybe I just shouldn't do podcasts. Right. But instead of stopping it, maybe it's thinking about, okay, you got to 50K, right? You want to get to 200K. So let's say your marketing tactic or is using, Anchor or Spotify, or decide to do Google Podcasts, something like that. I don't know, something on Google for your podcast, or YouTube, for example, right? And perhaps it's not that necessarily that you didn't have, that the podcast was bad, but maybe perhaps it's how you got the listeners that was bad. Maybe just tweak your messaging, tweak your marketing. Maybe it's the intro that needs some tweaking. Maybe it's the topics you're talking about, the titles that you have, the lack of reviews that you have, whatever it may be, right? But something needs to be tweaked, right? That essentially will help to catapult you. It doesn't mean that you stop your entire podcast because you didn't reach your goal, right? It doesn't mean that you stopped doing Instagram because you didn't reach the number of followers that you wanted, right? Maybe you didn't reach influencer status, right? It doesn't mean that Instagram is bad. It just means that maybe you need to tweak the captions that you have, right? Just small little changes that can make all the difference, right? I even remember back when I was on a pricing strategy team for a multi-billion-dollar company, and essentially I was working on this one department, right? And essentially, for pricing, sometimes you just switch, okay, I'm just gonna switch where this, we call it the architecture, but where this product relates to all the other, products in the department, and just even that switch led to more multi-millions of dollars. And so, but the thing is that just a tweak, just a minor little tweak can help you just change the game for your business. So for example, I remember when I was working in my, starting out with doing lives every day. I was doing lives every day on Facebook. And then I would do it on Facebook and then do it on LinkedIn and essentially repurpose it and post it on LinkedIn and Instagram. And I was doing that for every single day. And my whole goal is to do 365 days. So I ended up doing that. But in the first 30 to 60 days, I was like, okay, well, seems like I'm not getting much traction on like Facebook business page, and at the time I didn't realize that by that time Facebook business page was pretty much like, I don't say dead, but in order for you to actually get traction, you had to like use ads. And so I didn't realize at the time. But had I thought that maybe what I could have said was, oh, clearly these lives aren't working, I should just stop it all together, at day 30. I could have done that. But what I chose to do instead was say, you know what? Maybe it's the title. They just need to tweak the title. They just need to tweak the topic. Maybe I just need to tweak how long it is or how short it is. So I ended up trying to do like 3-minute things instead of like a whole 20-minute episode. And then, at some point decided, let me not post it on Instagram anymore. I'm just going to focus on Facebook and LinkedIn. So just tweets that you make. And now I'm on episode 402. But had I decided to just like stop it all together at episode 30, I would have gotten to episode 402, right? And so it's really understanding what are the tweaks that need to be made in your business. There's a small little changes that you can make that you want to commit to as well too, because sometimes there are tweaks you need to make, but you don't want to actually make those tweaks, which then gets us to step number 3, which is pretty much stopping, right? Removing the blocks. And so what actually needs to be removed from your business, right? And so there are things that definitely need to be stopped. So whether it's an employee, whether it is a system that you're using that's just not working. Like one of my clients, she's a brick and mortar a store out in Michigan, and she's been in business for about 13 years. And through like working with me, we ended up getting her additional $53,000 in sales for her business, right, for the year versus last year. Now, the thing is, though, one of the things we had to do was really look at the system that she was using for her pricing and her inventory management system. And we ended up essentially revamping that entire thing, which is now going to allow us to even have even more impact in this upcoming year, so that she can then really transition her brick and mortar into an e-commerce as well to store as well and get sales from there as well. But essentially, it's like for her, that's the tweak that she needs to make, right? It's not necessarily that her online is bad because she doesn't get any sales from her online. She was only getting sales from brick and mortar, but it was that the experience that she was giving people online just needed to be tweaked, right? And so we ended up, essentially what we're working on this year is like really tweaking and making those tweaks for her business so she can start actually making sales online versus just in her store, right? Which is still doing very well 6 figures wise, but it's also looking at how to make those tweaks in her business so she can also take advantage of other opportunities, right? Now, things in terms of that needs to be stopped was that she had this employee that was doing website management for her that really just wasn't really that responsive. Was kind of like a friend of the family, wasn't really, had done the initial setup like a few years ago, right? But that's pretty much it. And so it was like, okay, well, so then essentially I had to just connect her with another website developer person, right? And so sometimes you just have to fire some people. Maybe sometimes you just have to move people around in your team, right? But maybe it's you that needs to change, right? Sometimes it's like the founder or the entrepreneur, the small business owner themselves, they need to switch a block in their mind, right? But essentially it's removing the blocks from your mind and from whatever your systems, whatever it is going around you, right? So that you can then focus your energy on number 1 and 2, which is essentially what's working on your business so you can supercharge it, but also the tweaks that need to be made, right? Because any time and energy that you're putting on things that aren't working is time that you're putting away from time that you're not giving to things that actually could be working, that you could be supercharging, or things that you need to be tweaking so that they can eventually become something that is working in the future. And so number 3, essentially removing the blocks. So step number 1 is to identify what's working. Number 2, understand the tweaks that need to be made. Number 3 is removing the blocks from, essentially just stopping whatever this actually needs to be stopped. But again, it does not mean stop your business. This means like stopping what needs to be stopped, right? Like, there's something, the things that aren't working. Yeah.
I love that. I think that's so important. I think there are a lot of, especially new business owners, but entrepreneurs, small business owners, all of us start off as one, right? And then even from there grow. But a lot of companies, like for example, if I work with a chiropractor or whatever, when I'm working with them, a lot of the times they are still taking so much charge of every single aspect of their business. So a lot of times the thing that they need to stop is trying to be over every single aspect. A lot of times you just need to step back a little bit or let go a little bit and trust that the person you're hiring, that you did a good job hiring somebody. And if you didn't, let it go and until you figure out that you didn't, and then get somebody else in there. Yeah. Because a lot of times you cannot do, what you need to be doing, or, you can't run your business if you are literally trying to do every single piece of it. So just taking that step back is definitely, and, like you said, just stopping whatever it is that maybe the part where you're not shining, or the part where, you don't necessarily need to be involved in every single aspect of your business at all times. And so I think that's cool. I think that a lot of people want to be, and maybe don't realize that they're doing themselves and their business and their clients or patients or whoever a disservice by doing it that way.
That is true. That is true. That is true. And sometimes it's even like things that maybe you're even doing in your marketing, or things that you're doing with your business model, like even products or services that you're offering that just no one's buying that. So stop.
Yeah, like I would say, don't get married to your idea. Do not get married to your business, your idea, any of it. You need to be realistic. Look at the numbers. Look at, analyze it, figure out, make the tweaks, do whatever you need to do. But don't get married to it, because you don't want to keep it going just because you love it. I mean, that's not like the best way to look at things. So yeah, it could just be that. It could be like your baby, sometimes you kind of have to, move on from that and try a different product or something.
Indeed. Yep. And then step number 4, final step, is to essentially then package all the stuff that we just went through in terms of what's working, what tweaks you need to make, and then the blocks that you essentially stopping all the blocks. And essentially you want to write that all out in sort of a simple, like 1-page little document. Kind of like a business plan, or so, not necessarily a 40-page document you're going to give to a bank, no, but a 1-page simple little document thing that essentially you just have for yourself, that you can also share with your team if you have a team, or just for yourself to put on a board or the wall or whatever it is you want to do, but to really remind yourself of what it is that you actually are going to supercharge, and you're focusing on supercharging. And then at the same time, what is it that you're tweaking and how you're tweaking it. And I tell my clients like 3 and 3. And so I tell them to do 3 goals in the 3 months, essentially. And so when I talked about earlier, how I have my goals in October, November, I already know what I'm working off the first 3 months of 2022, because that's my focus. Because every quarter I'm looking at what's working, what needs to be tweaked, right? And then essentially ensuring that I'm evolving and staying open to that change, and adapting my company, my business, and my services and my experiences that I'm giving the clients, customers, and leads as I need to as well. And then essentially it's like, with that plan, you're also, say it and spray it. Right? You're saying it and spraying it. And so they're like, even for example, someone may decide, okay, you know what? I know that for Instagram to work, perhaps I need to post like 4 times a day. That's a tweak I need to make, but I don't want to make that tweak, right? Okay, cool. So then in that case, you don't want to do Instagram. That's fine. Don't do Instagram. But now what that means is that stop telling people that you're on Instagram, right? Like, instead do something else. Like, don't tell people to follow you on Instagram if you're not even going to try to, do that anymore, really, right? And so say it and spray essentially is really just, what are the goals that you're working on, ensuring that you are representing and sharing this sort of new, not necessarily new business, but your priorities for the next 3 months of what you're doing with everyone else around you as well too, right? It should update in your marketing. It should update in your messaging. It should update in what you're saying when you're networking. It should just update itself and everything that you're doing and how you're communicating as well.
I love that. See, I think some people get very caught up in like a decision that they make, that thinking that it has to be like, this is what I have to do for the next 80 years. No, I mean, focus on it for a year or for a quarter even, go all in and really do it, and then assess it. And if it's working, supercharge it, keep tweaking, and keep going with that same thing all year long. And what a great result, like what a difference you'll see in those results. So do you recommend that people come up with something like, how do you do it in your business? Do you come up with something like 1 to 3 things, or 1 to 5, 7 things for the entire year, like a big thing, and then your little goals, the 3 goals that you work on per quarter, like are moving you towards that big thing? Or do you just do quarter by quarter? I'm doing these 3 goals, and depending on like the results of these, I'm gonna do, do you know what your next 3 goals are? Like,
that's what I do. So I essentially do quarter by quarter. So yes, and I tell my clients to do the same thing, essentially quarter by quarter. Because at the end of the day, if you are whether you've been in business for 10 plus years, or whether you've been in business for 5 years, and actually let me preface this. So when I was in corporate, I was on strategy teams of multi-billion-dollar companies. And so we would do 3 to 5 year plan. What's your 3 to 5 year strategic plan, right? And then every year we would assess how we were going on that 3 to 5 year plan, all that jazz, or 10-year plan, 10-year vision or whatever, right? To get to $10 billion, whatever it was. But essentially as a small business, right? If you are quarter by quarter works. All right. Essentially, it's like if you are looking to grow and actually like scale your business, if you're just looking to, have money on the side and do whatever, then, do you. You can flow whatever speed you want to flow at, right? But if you're actually looking to adapt and grow and be relevant and really make a change and an impact in your community, city, state, country, and world, right? And essentially grow your income, not only get to an income and like maintain it, but like grow it, right? And on a continual basis, then you need to ensure that you're also staying aware of your business on what's working, what needs to be, evolved and tweaked, and what needs to be stopped. Because again, every day you're spending, every quarter you're spending, every month you're spending on the things that you don't need to be spending your time on, right? On the blocks, it's time that you're spending away from things that you could be supercharging, right? Or on things that, could be tweaked so that they can eventually become things that you want to supercharge, whatever it may be. And so I do quarter to quarter. And I see in the very beginning, I used to do actually month to month, and then I switched to quarter to quarter. And so people who are very early stage do month to month, but like give it like a good try. Like you need to this is going to be very depending on what it is that you're working on. So for example, if your goal is to, I think related to social media, don't just be like, oh, I did it for like, I did that one post on Instagram and it didn't work. Well, it looks like Instagram. Like, no, right? Essentially, it's like, no, it's like, you gave it a good try. You decided, you're going to post in Facebook groups. You did it for a good, 12 weeks, 90 days, and you just assessed it. And you're like, okay, maybe it's not for you. Maybe you weren't getting the results that you wanted. Maybe you feel like it's not your style, whatever it may be. But understanding that after a good 90 days and then deciding, what are you going to do for the next 90 days? Are you going to continue that and tweak it? Or are you going to do something completely different, right? And that's really what it comes down to.
So hold on. So let's go with the one that you're talking about now. So would it be that they have like a bigger goal for the year that they are trying to get towards, or can it be a different goal every quarter? Or that's what I was trying to get at. Is there a big goal for the year that they're moving towards and tweaking towards the whole, every quarter they change it to get better at it for the end of the year? Or it's every quarter, this is my goal and this is what it is. And next quarter it could be totally different.
It's every quarter, and every quarter could be totally different. The reason why I intentionally did that is because, so for me, when I was in my business, and this is essentially how I live my life, this is how I actually live my life. Was essentially, I had this big goal, and I just do this big goal, and I just work towards things with the goals. How I essentially lived my life before entrepreneurship. Then I went to entrepreneurship. I would see the different things. I was like, okay, entrepreneurship, I'm new to this thing. How do I do this, right? So I do my little research, how people setting goals, right? And people would say, yeah, do this one big goal for the year. And then, you do things throughout quarter by quarter. But typically what happens is that business owners, entrepreneurs, their one big goal for the year is going to be something related to sales or something related to, I'm going to get this amount of money per year. That's usually what it ends up being. Especially at the end of the day. Or I'm going to get to this amount of people in my group, or I'm going to have, this amount of impact, right? In my, community, whatever it is, right? That's usually their big goal for the year. The problem is that you just don't know what you don't know, right? You don't know a pandemic is going to happen, right? People, they probably had a big goal for the year in 2020. And then in March, right, a whole thing happened. No one saw coming, right? Or they didn't see coming probably. And so, right, it's you just don't know what's going to happen. And so what you need to do is ensure that you're not, keeping yourself married to one particular goal, right? And that you're able to say, okay, January to March, I'm going to work on this. All right, cool. This happened. Let's tweak it, right? But you got to keep yourself open to change and flexing, but strategically and intentionally, right? So we talk about pivoting. You got to pivot strategically and intentionally. You don't just pivot let me just switch up the whole entire thing. No, you do strategically and intentionally by essentially keeping in mind what is working, what needs to be tweaked, and what needs to be stopped, and then ensuring that you're spreading that out and sharing that out with the world in the best way possible that you can, right? And so for me, it's I was doing the whole I'm gonna get to this amount of sales per year. But I didn't know what I didn't know. I literally was just yeah, I can do that. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to do it, right? And, maybe in I don't know, a couple years, whatever, maybe I'll reach that goal, whatever. But I'm planning on going to $10 billion empire, right? But I don't know what I don't know. And so at the end of the day, it's that is my life vision. And the thing is that, well, in terms of the clients that I work with are purpose-driven business owners. So people looking to make an income and an impact, right? And with that, everyone who's working on a purpose-driven business, it's, there's some mission, there's some vision, right? Whether it be you want to be a staple in your community for something, whether it is you want to revamp the entire U.S. education system. Another one of my clients is essentially, looking to really ensure that, 1 million women become debt-free by the year 2030, whatever it is, right? And so typically someone who's looking to make an impact and an income, they have a vision. They have a purpose. They have a mission, right? And so that is your shining light. You don't need a year by year of your vision, right? And things like that is your shining light in terms of what it is that you want to do. It could happen in 5 years. It could happen in 3 years. It could happen in 10 years, whatever, you don't know that. But what you do know, what you do want to make sure of is that all you can control is what you're focusing on today and the steps that you're taking today and tomorrow that are related to that overall mission and vision. Right. And essentially the steps that you're taking today and tomorrow is going to be steps that relate to the business that you're working on, that relate to the mission and vision of whatever it is, right, that you're working on. And so at the end of the day, it's quarter by quarter because it's allowing that flexibility, it's allowing that openness. It's also like in general, I mean, even and technically to some extent, some Fortune 500 companies will do this, right? Quarterly meetings, right? Or even like public companies, they have quarterly updates, right? It's not the like,
But you can do that with yourself.
Huh? What do you say?
You can do that with yourself.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. Precisely. Right. And so that's essentially what I do. And I also do that with my team where I do like every quarter, like what's happening. Or even the monthly, I also do a monthly update too, with them as well. But essentially it's really looking at, quarter by quarter, what is working, what needs to be tweaked, and then how can you then keep going. The thing is that with this, like let's say a quarter of January through March, every people have different quarters. Let's say your quarter is January through March, right? It doesn't mean that you wait till March 31st. To like decide, what's going to happen April through June, right? You may already get a sense by the time like March 5th, March 10th happens of like, okay, let's say like, for example, I'm at some point, for example, okay, let's say my 3 goals, for example, this quarter, these are actually my 3 goals, but how they're going to play themselves out, unknown. But my 3 goals for this quarter, essentially, one is continuing to enhance my clients' experiences, make sure that they're continuing to be successful. Number 2, I just started my professorship at a university in the School of Business. And so ensuring that my students are, learning entrepreneurship, real world entrepreneurship, the best way possible, and that they're, really engaging, interacting. And number 3 is being the best co-host and collaborator I can be as I essentially do private presentations for different people's audiences of my new signature talk. And so it's a 2-hour like workshop thing. But essentially, with that, I may find, that, and mind you, these are goals, not tasks, right? There are tasks in between all these goals, but these are just goals. And so perhaps in February, what I'm going to do in February, though, like I have my general way of what I think I'm doing with the professorship class, for example. I have a general way of how I'm teaching the course. It's like I'm letting students interact and engage, doing breakout rooms, doing like some other stuff, some polls, etc. Right? What I'm going to do in the middle, though, is like take a poll and be like, hey, how you guys liking the class the first like 5 weeks or so, right? Okay, cool. Based on the feedback that they share, I may decide to continue like that, right, throughout the time. Or maybe I might decide to do a little tweaks, do a little couple of changes here and there, right, to then improve the second half of the class or the course, right? Or maybe it's too late for me to change that. And so maybe if I get invited next year to teach again, I now know what I'm going to do for the next year. But essentially, it's not, necessarily thinking about, okay, you have to switch, January 1st to March 31st, right? You'll find if you stay aware with your top 3 goals or 2 or 1, whatever it is that you decide to do for the quarter, definitely focus on 3. But essentially, if you decide that you want to, focus on those top 3 goals, you'll find that you'll just be more aware and attuned on what is happening around you and how that, relates to ultimately what you're actually trying to achieve. It'll just happen naturally. Like I don't know how to say it, but this will happen naturally, honestly. Yeah.
And I really like that you're saying, to write it down and, like I keep stuff on the wall by my computer and I try to make sure I read it every day. But even if I don't, I think that, for the most part, I know it's there and I see it and I glance at it. And it's like, in the back of my mind, even if I don't consciously, sit there and read it, although I do try to do that as well. I do think that is a very important part of it, because if you are kind of keeping it top of mind, like in sales, with like email marketing, you want to stay top of mind for the people. It doesn't matter that they're not buying from you, but you want to stay in front of them. Same thing with your goals. You want those goals to be right in front of you. It doesn't mean that you're, accomplishing that goal today. No, you're working towards that goal. But if you're not looking at it every day, if you don't know where you're going, it's really hard to get there. It is. And so, I think focusing on, like you said, the tasks and all of that, focusing daily on those little tasks that you have decided will get you to that goal is okay, as long as you realize that, you kind of are aligning it or attaching it to that goal.
Yep.
which is very powerful. And I think a lot of people lose track of that. And that's the other reason why people never do their New Year's resolution, is because they think of it and they really want it, you know, like, oh my God, I so want to do this. And then they forget what it was. You know, they're not looking at it every day. They're not thinking about it every day. They're not, you know, taking a small action or big action or an action, any kind of action, to move themselves towards it every day. And I think that's very important. So if you have those written down, and you know, especially like a lot of people, like you said, get overwhelmed. I like to do mine. I actually plan farther out, and then I chunk it back and I do a year. But I also do it just like you're saying, like this quarter is this quarter, and I'm not looking at those other two. I'm just focusing on this, even though I do have it kind of mapped backwards. But I will totally focus on, you know, those goals for just this quarter, see how it's going, tweak it, look at it, you know, and then reassess. And I think that if people did that, they would have so much more success in accomplishing their goals. So do you want to recap real quick your 4 steps? I think they were very powerful, and I think would help a lot of people to get to their goals. And then we'll go into like how we can get in touch with you.
So essentially step number 1 is identify what is working in your business. Step number 2 is to understand and make tweaks where needed. Step number 3, to remove your blocks and stop what needs to be stopped. And then step number 4 is to say it and spray it and simplify it in a written example for yourself. And then ensure that you are spreading that message and spraying the sort of revives, you know, quarterly goals with whoever needs to hear it as well. And so those are essentially the top 4 steps. And the reason why, you know, I say do it quarter by quarter, to what you are saying, Erica, is that, you know, it does allow you to focus on those actions, because at the end of the day, it's, you know, if you're doing the whole year out, you just don't know what's going to happen throughout the year, right? You just don't. You can plan for it. You can plan as much as you want, but life is a funny way of happening.
And the flexibility you mentioned. You have to be flexible, and you have to be ready to do something else or pivot, like so many people that didn't pivot during COVID went.
Yeah, right? Exactly. They decided, oh, well, time to go. Bye.
And like you can plan 5 years out, 10 years out, 1 year out, but if you're not ready to pivot, if you're not ready to make a change, it doesn't really matter. So you mentioned that you were doing some sort of masterclass or something. Is that something you want to talk about, or you want to tell us how we can get in touch with you?
Yeah, happy to connect. So I actually have a special code for those here. But my masterclass called How to Grow Your Purpose-Driven Business Without Burnout, Sleep Deprivation, or Meditation. And so what I go into is, you know, essentially how to find the time to do it all, to bounce all the hats that you have in between, how to unstuck your income and ensure that you're growing the purpose-driven business that you want. And also then my number 1 digital marketing hack in terms of how you can ensure your marketing is running efficiently so you can maintain and grow an online presence in 2022. And so it's pretty much the insider's guide to reviving your business for long-term success. And so I also have created a code here because the next one is coming up actually this Thursday, January 13th. At 6 p.m. Eastern. So for those who are able to tune in here live, you can grab a ticket by, I think maybe it's going to be in the comments, I'm not sure. You can grab a ticket for a complimentary ticket there. And if you are tuning in after Thursday, then essentially just send me a message and we'll see about the next day. I've gotten demands for even more dates. And so working through that. But essentially the next one is Thursday, January 13th.
That's awesome. I just posted it in the comments. So if you can't find it in the comments, just DM Vanessa or myself and we will get it to you. But I just posted it in there. And I did a post earlier. I mentioned this. So I'll put a link to this in there and I'll put that in there as well. So Vanessa was awesome. I love your topic of conversation. It was great to have you. And I think it's something that every single entrepreneur or business owner needs to really get a grip on, because it is the difference between success and failure. And we all know the statistics are not in your favor. So you need to do everything you can to make sure that you are, you know, moving in the direction of success. And this is, I think, one of the biggest things that helps people really, you know, we're all, especially entrepreneurs more so than business owners, but entrepreneurs, we're all a little bit, what I like to say, squirrel. You know, we get excited about things and we can, you know, oh my God, but this looks good. So if you are not very focused on what you want to do, it's very easy to, you know, like
Get
just drop
distracted
something
and,
that you shouldn't drop, or never drop something that you should be dropping. I mean, both of those are really easy to do. So by having that list of 4 things, I think, go through them all the time and see, what is it that I need to be working on? What is it that I need to do? Is there something I can get rid of? Is there something I can keep and tweak? I love it. So thank you, Vanessa, so much. It was great to have you on here. And maybe we'll get back together in a couple of months and see if anybody, or maybe beginning of next quarter, we'll do this again.
Yes.
Or the end of this quarter before the beginning of next quarter, so people can plan for it.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you. And everyone who's joining or on the replay, #replay, we will see you later. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.